So thanks for being here again. With us here today, we have Robin Allen, who is a master teacher just in general, and he's a master MyStar teacher. And Robin's been around MyStar as long as I have, and as long as Barb has. And he's helped write a lot of MyStar units and has continued to work with us on and off. And he just does some amazing things in his classroom. And we wanted to share them with you. And so Barb is here with us today also. She is also a retired teacher like me. She used to be Robin's main teaching partner and partner in crime. And so she's going to introduce us a little bit to standards-based grading and how the MyStar assessments are structured real briefly. And then we're going to let Robin show you how he, levels that up. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Barb.
Right. Thanks for joining us today. Today, what we'd like to do is talk a little bit about standards-based grading. And we'd like to look, first of all, at how the NGSS kind of defines assessment and what we need in assessment and proficiency scoring and how that can work with standards-based grading. And then we're going to turn it over to Robin, and he's going to talk about how he is in his classroom using assessment to help motivate students, to help them track their own progress, and to give them agency over their own learning. So to begin with, let's talk very briefly, and I'm going to be quick because Robin, I really want him to have lots of time to share with you what he's doing because it's very, very interesting and exciting. So defining standards-based grading can be a little bit different, a little difficult, but basically you've all kind of said the same thing, is that we're only focused on the standards, the academic capability or proficiency of students, and we're removing a lot of those non-academic related aspects, effort, attitude, those sort of things. And reporting separate scores for each standard instead of a combined average. Lots of times, maybe not even necessarily a score. We use leveling for MyStar, and you'll kind of see how that works as we move through. Benefit is it gives you more accurate information about what students truly know about the content. When I taught in Midland, we gave students 2 grades. We gave them a content-based grade, but we also gave them a work habits grade. And it was really nice because parents could see where students needed to work. Rather than averaging all of that into a big, 1 grade, we could see if there was a student who was really struggling with completing homework or attitude or any of those sorts of things, but got the concepts. And we could see which students were really good, students in terms of getting homework done on time, keeping their binders organized, but struggled with the standards. So we gave 2 grades so that parents could see where student strengths and weaknesses lied, and that would really help with, that was kind of a benefit to both the students and the parents. Focusing on understanding and looking at specific skills, and then, removing extra grading like points for behaviors or participation. And one of the benefits is teachers know exactly where students are in each standard. And that leads to some great information that can help to inform instruction. So before we get into what Robin's doing, just in case people have not seen NGSS aligned assessments or MyStar assessments, we want to get you into those and kind of look at how they're structured and the purpose, because the structure of an NGSS aligned assessment can really help when it comes to evaluating student proficiency with standards. And MyStar tries to break it down to make it as straightforward as possible. Science is more difficult than a lot of other subjects because we have integrated standards. So rather than just looking at one thing, we're looking at students' ability in SEPs, science and engineering practices, disciplinary content, and CCCs, and not just those, but their ability to integrate all of those. And so it makes standards-based grading a little more complicated. Robin's going to kind of show you how at Northeast here in Midland, they've managed that so they can still integrate all 3 of those dimensions and use a standards-based approach that really focuses on the SEPs. But let's start by looking at a MyStar assessment, looking at what an NGSS aligned assessment should look like, and then thinking about how we grade these to help get us started. So some of the hallmarks of a NGSS aligned assessment is that a good assessment should evaluate students' use of at least two of the three dimensions. We try to do all three. And we want students to look at a new scenario with a phenomenon accompanied by a task. So it should be similar to what students have done in their instruction, but we want it to be different enough that it's authentic. It's not just memorize, regurgitate. They have to apply their learning to a new phenomenon or a new problem, and we want to give them a task. We try to scaffold them through that sense-making process with a series of prompts. And in the end of the assessment, they should come up with a three-dimensional description, explanation, or solution. But we scaffold them through. We want to give them the pieces, like one bite at a time, to help them solve the problem or construct the explanation, but also to help teach them that problem solving or making or sense making structure. So as they're working through, they're getting the idea about how I could solve a problem, or what do I need to think about? And then, okay, usually it's DCI first, then we're going to add in a little bit of the SEP. What can that tell us? And then finally look through the lens of the CCC to make sense. So we use a cluster scenario or a set of related questions about a phenomenon or problem, and we scaffold students from very easy questions, usually DCI content, to the more complicated, more sophisticated, three-dimensional constructed response kinds of items. So when we ask students to look at an NGSS aligned assessment, we're asking them to do a sense-making process, and we scaffold them through it. But generally what we're asking students to do is to consider the phenomenon or the problem to start out with. That's in the task. They've got to think about it. What is it that I'm doing? What is it that I'm solving? Gathering evidence, and lots of times we try to point them to the evidence that they're going to need. So we might give them a graph and some specific questions to make them focus in on what we want them to think about. Then we're going to ask them to apply that DCI knowledge and reasoning. And then the last thing we're going to do is ask them to make sense of the phenomenon or solve the problem, usually using the lens of the CCC. So explain it using cause and effect or structure, function, that sort of thing. So this really helps us when it comes to assessment, because as students work through this sense-making process, they're going from the easiest things, the simplest things, to more sophisticated, which can really help us as we go to grade. So let's get you into one of these scenarios, one of these clusters, one of these bundles, and let you look at how students would progress through this sense-making process as they work through. So here's what we're going to ask you to do. We're going to ask you to look at a question, and this comes from a pre-post from Unit 6.5. And we're going to ask you to look for evidence of students using DCI knowledge, SEP skills, and the lens of the CCC or the tool of the CCC. How can I use cause and effect? How can I use, scale, structure, function? How can I use scale and proportion? Those sorts of things. So we're going to ask you to see where you see each of these parts of the cluster and give your reasoning. If you need a review, here are some of the SEP and CCCs that you might see in this cluster. You might be seeing patterns, cause and effect at the very end, energy and matter, structure and function, those sorts of things. And then here's what you're actually going to do. When you look at this cluster, you're going to look at the question part 2A. What are students needing? What information do they need? Do they need DCI knowledge? Do they need SEP skill? Or are they using the lens of the CCC? You can just put an X in the box if you want, check it, and then reasoning. Keep in mind, though, that the goal is integration. So there may be some of these parts where they're doing more than just one of these things. Maybe they have to use the DCI, the SEP, and the CCC. Or maybe it's the CCC and the DCI. So as you're looking through these prompts, what do you think we're asking students to do? And then you're just going to put a little X, whatever you want, and reasoning if you have time. Okay, great. So Chris reminded me how difficult this can be. But if you really look at each of the parts, really the intent of 2A was to get them thinking about competition And then we bring in the graph and we ask them, which has most. So we want them really doing that analyzing data. So that comes in next. And then the CER is the most difficult. We really should, in the reasoning, see that students are using competition and food as to cause the differences that we see in growth. And so ideally, students should be progressing and we should see them using all three at the very end in their reasoning. And then bringing in that SEP a little more heavily with the graph and that, but cause and effect is really a tricky one because it's sort of everywhere. It's really hard to not have cause and effect in almost any question. Hopefully you noticed as well that after the first question, we did have a why did you choose this answer? And the intent for that is that if a student then, for example, doesn't read this question correctly and gets it wrong, at least then as a teacher, you know why that is. Why did they answer that? So we try to sometimes when we use multiple choices, have that question after. So there's no one right or wrong for this. But if you think about that structure where we usually start with knowledge, DCI, bring in the SEP, and then in the last question, bring in that CCC, it can really help us when we come to grading. So if you think about the leveling, if we look at level 1, and this will be helpful a little later on because Robin did something similar, but he's not using he's doing it slightly different, but his levels are similar. So at level 1, we've got approaching basic proficiency, needs help even to do the easiest of questions, the multiple choice. At level 2, students probably have the DCI knowledge. They probably could answer that first multiple choice question, but they might have struggled with the rest of it, or you might see some pretty significant misconceptions still lingering. At level 3, that's proficient. That's where we want students to be. And so at that point, they're integrating the 3 dimensions, but maybe not with complete sophistication in terms of maybe their reasoning might have been a little weak, but for the most part, you were seeing that they could answer those questions and without major errors or misconceptions. At level 4, we've got mastery. They're pretty much getting all of it right without major errors, without major misconceptions, and was a pretty good level of sophistication. So if you look at a pre-post test, you're going to get grading guidance that looks like the second table, where we have for each question 1, 2, and 3, we have, in our opinion, as we wrote the assessments, what we thought would be evidence for each level. So for question 1, in order to be level 2, we think they should get A and B correct. Those were probably multiple choice questions in that case. Level 3 would be A, B, and C. Level 4, they would have to get D correct as well. And so that allows you to give a grade for each one of the questions if you'd like to. So we recommend that when you go to score something like this, that you use that leveling information that we've given you. Change it if you want to. It's just recommendations. If you think that, B should go with level 3 proficiency, move it. But this is the process we recommend. Use that information and your professional judgment to determine what items are going to be evidence of which level. So I think if they get A correct, that's going to be level 2. If they get A, B, and C correct, that's level 3. Add in D, now we're at level 4 proficiency. As you grade, look at the student work cluster holistically. Determine where on that continuum of proficiency this student should be placed. So I read the whole thing. Oh my gosh, they missed the first one, the multiple choice that was easy, but oh my gosh, they hit it out of the park on that part D. So I'm going to ding them a little bit, but they showed me that they understand. They must have read something wrong in that part A. Okay, assign them a level. I think this student is at a level 3.5. Then use a converter to assign a percent or point value for the student. And here's a couple examples of converters. You can do whatever you'd like. There's lots of them out there, but note that a level 3 is in the A range regardless of, both of these. So you know, this can help you in terms of knowing what it is your students are can do, are proficient at, those sorts of things. It's great for your students. They're getting the opportunity to try to work through this sense making, this problem solving, plus it's preparing them for high stakes tests that are to come. Um, so I don't want to take too much time, but we wanted to give you a little background on how MyStar recommends that you use our assessments. And now I want to turn it over to Robin, and he's going to kind of tell you about how he's doing things similar, but using what MyStar is given in a little bit of a different way.
All right, thanks, Bar. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here to talk to you guys. So it's really about intrinsic motivation with standards-based grading, and so we're trying to get them to have more ownership in their learning, and by using formative assessment. So we are a school that uses proficiency scales. And so we were tasked to decide what our priority standards are. And so we had a team of teachers that went in and we looked at the different standards. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but we also were talking about what is it that motivates students? What is it that motivates the middle school students? And I'm sure a lot of you have seen this before, talking about how motivation equals value times expectation. Whereas the value would be like the reward, could be intrinsic, could be extrinsic, in terms of learning, the importance of it to the person or the student. And the expectation is whether or not you think you can be successful. And so I like that formula, because if one is 0, there's not going to be a whole lot of motivation if you multiply something by 0. And so we're trying to set up a situation where they believe that they can truly be successful. And we celebrate that success, which gives it lots of value. And so that's our main goal. And we treat assessment like this, where assessment, I know back in the old days, it was, you did the assessment of learning, you taught, and then you assessed to see if people got it. And then a lot of times you just sort of moved on and said, well, they'll get it some other time, or I covered that. They must not have wanted to learn it, or whatever it might be. I don't know. But now we're looking at it more as assessment for learning. It's formative. It's actually what drives our instruction. The assessment tells us what we're going to be teaching and doing and where the students are. So it's a pretty good flip, and I love it. Using that assessment for more than just judgment. It's awesome also because it's focused on growth. It's low stake. It's formative. They're going to get many, many chances to try it again. And because they get many, many chances to try it again, they're going to experience success. And I've just noticed that once kids start experiencing success, it's a game changer, because they realize that they can do it. And maybe in years past, they've never done it. The teachers always just moved on. And it's kind of like, what am I doing here? And I don't think I'll ever get it. But when you don't give up on them and they realize that, because at first, in September, they're sort of like, okay, he's going to move on. They're just going to move on. I'll just wait them out. And then when you don't move on and you're like, we got till May. You're going to learn this. And they're like, oh, wow. Okay. And then they do learn it. And then it's like, oh, I can actually do this. And then it's awesome. So I'm probably getting ahead of myself. I don't know. I don't do this very often. So just bear with me. So yeah, this is, as a team at Northeast, we looked at what was the most important. What did we want the 6th graders to leave 6th grade with mastery of? Like, what are the standards that were the most important to us? And we looked at the DCIs, we looked at the SEPs, and we looked at the CCCs. we sort of separated them out and said, what do we want our kids to know? And it was just, it just felt obvious to us. We want them to think like scientists. We want them to have critical thinking skills and to be able to communicate their thoughts and to be able to solve problems. And we were like, okay, so that's not really a DCI. That's a process. And we have them in the SEPs. And so we got really excited. We're like, this is what we should be focusing on. And then the DCIs can come later after they understand how to do these things. And so we picked those three that you see on the screen, the SEP 2, 4, and 6, and we created our scales based on those. And then it's just been like it's been fluid. Like we've changed every year to make it so that it worked better and that the kids understood it. And we also added more, like we kind of look at it like a ladder. We added more steps of success so that the kids could feel success early. And this is also important, the disciplinary literacy. And the SEPs get kids to think like scientists so they can understand what professionals do, the vocabulary of the processes, and just authentic tools and methods is what we really focus on. And we just thought if they can build a model, understand a model, analyze a graph, create a graph, be able to argue with evidence and make claims, that it really doesn't matter what the DCI is that they're learning. They're going to be successful. So we were pretty excited when we thought of that at the time. This is sort of how it. There's more to it than this, but this might be a better way to understand what I'm trying to say. So, like level 1 would be needs help with basic proficiency in SEP knowledge. So we're starting out, when we start in September, we are completely focused on the SEPs and understanding and identifying all the important parts. Now, this isn't like kill and drill with vocabulary. These are tier 2 words that we want automacy on, meaning when we ask them what a claim is, we want every kid knowing the exact definition. It's the same definition. So I'm not saying one thing and my teaching partner is saying a different definition and somebody else in 7th grade saying a different definition. In our school, we're trying to focus like evidence, there's facts that support my claim. And every kid at our school, if you stopped them in the hallway and said that, they would say those words. And we tried to chunk them into 5 to 7 words, so it wasn't overwhelming, because sometimes you see these vocabulary terms or and the definitions are 20 words long, and you're like, I don't know what that is, and you couldn't repeat it. So we did a lot of research on vocabulary, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. I'm sure you guys know what I mean, but the tier 2 is like the things you want the kids to know to automacy. Tier 3 would be more like the DCI words, like turbidity or just the words you're not going to see very often in real life. Important words, but I have them up on my word wall there, so kids can see them.
Tier 2 allows you to all speak the same language.
Right. Yeah. And Barb just said that knowing the tier 2, everyone's speaking the same language. I feel like I've talked too much about that. I'll move on. So yeah, the level 2 is understanding the SEP. You're understanding the words, and then you're able to do it, to do a CER, to make a graph, to create a model with all of the parts, right? And then the level 3 would be applying the SEP to the DCI. So every assignment or assessment would have a different DCI focus, because as you're going through the year. And so you would apply the different SEPs to the DCIs. And then with the CCCs being very abstract, we add those in for the level 4s. And so a lot of, like I teach 6th grade, like a lot of that's their brain chemistry isn't ready for abstract thinking quite yet. And so that's more of a level 4, because the CCCs are abstract. They're not real concrete. So So this is an example of level 2, the SEP. This is modeling. And the reason we scaffold it the way we do is for the early wins, the dopamine hits that everybody loves because people like being successful and they like that feeling. Yeah, that increases motivation. But an example for modeling for SEP2, we said, well, the kids need to know with automacy what the word input, output, system boundary, labels, title, and arrows, what those are. So that is the main thing that we want them to know. And we also want them to be able to identify those things in a model that maybe we create. And so then they would identify those things. So we give them as many chances as we need as we go through the MyStar unit. We give them as many chances as we need. We can do this a lot, and the kids get really excited because they know they can do it. They're like, "Oh, I can do this," and so they ask at various intervals, "Can I stay up at lunch and do a 2.0 on the model? Can I, when are we going to do that again?" So it's pretty exciting to see that motivation because they know they can be successful. So this is an example of the very beginning, like the first week of school, just to check and see what they know. And we play a bunch of vocabulary games. We do draw vocabulary pictures. We're just a lot of just fun, easy, like I said, easy early wins. And so we're all speaking the same language before we get into the meat and potatoes stuff. So everybody's, like I said, speaking the same language. And this is actually from a MyStar assessment that we use, and you can see we have them like highlight the system boundary and circle the title, or underline the labels. And I know that seems really, really easy, but I'm surprised when we started doing this. A lot of the things that we take for granted, the kids, they don't know it. We just assume it's been covered and somebody's told them how to do these things or what they are. Yes, most of them do. And that's okay because they'll just do it once and move on. But there are a lot of kids that they don't know what a label is. They don't understand where the title is. And it's really eye-opening, and it's very helpful to give them one-on-one support with that. And then so that, again, once we get past these twos, we're all on the same page. So then once they have their level 2 down, they understand the definition, they know what those are. We have that common vocabulary. They know where the parts of the model are. Then we would add the DCIs in. And so it's scaffolded again into parts for success. I've been using Donkey Kong as like the example, and how Jumpman has to go up the different levels, and sometimes the barrel hits him and he falls, and so they seem to like that. But like this is an example of creating a model. So you would the model would be a chickenpox germ infecting a cell, and they would need to have all those things included, and they know that they know exactly where they're headed by May. In September, they know exactly what they need, but it takes so much practice to get this, and it's not kind of a one and done thing. They'd have to show us that they truly know how to do this. We chose 3 times. Like, you need to show us 3 times in a row that you can, or maybe 3 out of 4, that they can do it. And then they also would analyze the model, and this would be an example of that. We use the MyStar scaffolding system. So in this particular assessment, it's a MyStar assessment. We just had them make a model and use our priority scales, our proficiency scales. We just had them create the model, and that's what they did. So they answered these scaffolding questions first, but we really don't grade these. In fact, we have them do these with a partner, so that they all know what's going on, what's happening. We might even go over it with them, and then this is what they're doing. Okay, now there might be a situation, there always is a situation like this, especially at the beginning of the year, where you still have kids that are trying to get the vocabulary. You got 4 kids that are still trying to do the identify, and then you have some kids that moved up the ladder more and they're doing this. You might have 3 different assessments going on at once. They're all assessing the same thing, the same DCI about the chicken pox at the cell, but they're at some kids are going to be looking more at the SEP, while other kids have advanced to doing a 3.0 model. And so that's how we do that. And then the 4.0 would be the CCCs. So to be the higher level thinking. And by this time, they really, really want to, there's the buy-ins there. They want to show you, it's a lot of the kids that aren't quite there yet and are just doing 3.0 work, ask if they can do the 4.0 work. And yes, they can. We don't hold anybody back. If kids are doing 2.0 work and they want to make the model, then by all means, we let them. We don't hold anybody back. And this would be above and beyond. Our level 3 would be like, that's where we want them. This is a full year. That's where we want them by the end of the year. And level 4 is for the kids that are maybe advanced or extending. And we give them, these are some ideas. So like they can come up with their own question or their own idea, but sometimes we'll give them prompts. We don't give them the same prompts every time, but we'll talk about what we want to do for this particular assignment, and then we'll give them a chance to show what they know and go above and beyond in their own way. And to be quite honest, a lot of the ones where we didn't give them a prompt were way better than anything I could have come up with, because I mean, I'm not really the smartest person in the room, to be honest. There's kids that are going to be doctors, and there are kids that are going to go on and do great things, and I don't want to limit them. I'd rather, see them use their agency and own what they're doing. And this is when it happens, is at the level 4 area. So it's really awesome. It's so great to see. A lot of kids get super excited about that. And then the end of the year goal was building the practices first without being overwhelmed by content, because as you know, your brain can only do one thing at a time. My wife can tell you that. I can't watch TV and talk to her. It doesn't work very well, but we don't want the kids trying to build their skills and feel overwhelmed. They're trying to think about the content. They're trying to think about the skill. We want the concrete before the abstract. So it's so nice to have it set up like that. And then the practices are developed over time, and it allows the kids to truly understand what that skill is and how to apply it. And then the feedback can be so targeted. So if I give an assignment, we talk about great mistakes and how you need to make a mistake to learn. And so we'll, at first you'll say, okay, I need somebody that got a 2.5 or a 1.5 to share their paper so we can learn from you. And at first they're all like, no, I would only share if I had a perfect paper. But then as they see like the culture, the community that's built because of this, they all want to. I think courage candy helps too, but I think it's more the culture, not the candy. But it's great to see, because they want to bring it up even though they made mistakes, and we talk about how close they are and that they only need to do this, and they'll have a 3, and they know they're going to get more chances. It's never one and done. So they're going to get more chances, so they're willing to take chances. They don't have to be perfect. And then lots of opportunities, like I was just saying, practice and growth. We talk about growth mindset all year. And it's really just that's what we want them to grow. It's like we use the analogy of like, not all of you walked when you were 9 months. Some of you walked when you were 12 months and 14 months. And, you know, you never know. And it's the same with learning. Everybody learns at a different pace. You're running your own race. You don't have to compare yourself to anybody. So just grow. And then I love the no time pressure for students, but there's no time pressure for me. And how awesome is that when you're like, oh, I can't get through everything. Well, I have time, and it's amazing. Because we're still learning the content, the DCI content as we're going through. They're not learning it. It's just we're focusing on different things. And it is really just been a revelation. It's been pretty cool. So that's been really nice. And this would be considered a kid-friendly scale. So we have proficiency scales that we use that kids wouldn't really be able to understand. They're more for teachers to see what they need to be at a 2, a 3, and a 4. So basically, and I don't want to do anything for you. It says record your group thoughts. Yeah. Okay. So basically, this is a scale that all the kids would get at the very beginning of the year. We tell them what all these words mean. We tell them what they're going to need to do, you know, throughout the year, and we just show them every before every assignment. It's posted in our room. We have something called growth folders where we keep these, and so this is just common vocabulary. Every day we're talking about our scales, and so they know all of this. And we don't hide it from them. We're not trying to trick them or anything by, oh, you didn't put a title on. We want them to be successful and be able to do it. Just because we have this, though, it doesn't always happen. So that's why we have to practice, which is, you know, might be surprising for some people. But you are going to go into a breakout room, and I want to. All right. Well, I was taking a look at some of the questions and some of the comments on here, and I think there's a lot that's going to be answered later on in the slideshow, and I don't want to run out of time, so we can circle back once I go through that. So some of them won't be answered, but some of them will, and we can talk about some of the ideas there. So let me go down here. This slide is just an example of the things that we might do with the MyStar assessments. So I know we already showed you the model. This would be scaffolding up to a CER. We basically just took the questions from MyStar and changed them into a format that we're trying to work on at our school. And then the graphing is on the right-hand side, the little one where we just took. There was a graph on the assessment, if I remember right, and we just we're having them make the graph, create the graph, and then analyze it. So that's where we're at. And so I know there's a lot of questions about the 4.0 level, so we're going to kind of head that way right now. So how do we track their progress? Like how do we try to get the kids to track their own progress, and we really are into agency, having the kids do things for themselves, and that growth tracking can build confidence, and they get ownership. They feel like they have ownership of it. And as you know, agency, there's a sense of control you feel. And I know I do. I feel everybody like needs to feel like they are a part of something and that they have some control over what's going on. And I can remember as a student, that was one of the issues that I always had. I wasn't a very good student, and I didn't feel like I wasn't a part of anything. I was just kind of sitting there passively, being told what to do. And so, and then not doing it, or sometimes doing it. But it takes away the power struggle when they have more agency, I think, and they're a part of it, which they should be the main part of it. Shouldn't be any question. But we use on the bottom of those scales, we have a spot where the kids, when they get something back, they can write it down, and they keep these things and their scored papers, their formative assessments, inside what we call growth folders. And so they keep the growth folders in the room, and then we also just put scores on, we use Synergy for our grading system, but we just put scores in not every individual assignment we do. We put almost like checkpoints where they're at every couple weeks, how they're doing. So the kids are keeping track of this, but I'm obviously also keeping track because they're not super accurate sometimes. But there might be on here, I don't know if I've gotten to doing revision. I was shocked that the kids want to revise. When they go for a 3, they want to revise so that they can get that 3. And I put a little star by it that shows it's been revised. And then on here, they'll put a little star by their score. And that's how we sort of keep track of, did you do it on your own or did you get help? So it's kind of cool also is when they're stuck, and a lot of times they'll say, I don't get this. You can say, well, I can walk you through it if you want. I mean, it'll be, to help you understand it, it'll be a 2.5, and that's okay if you want me to, or do you want to try to do it on your own? And then they're all like, I think I can do it on my own. Or like used to, maybe you feed them some answers and other classes, but they usually will be like, no, I want to try for the 3. They know they can revise it later, and it still feels like it is a 3.0 for them. And then, so this would be is that the same? Oh, yeah. And this is up here. This slide is where they're keeping track of it. And this is just an example of some work just from just a few of the graphs that we did, how they kind of go from doing like the identify, the define all the way over. And then a lot of them will have, there might be a 4.0 on there, maybe not. But they'll do some analysis on the back. So this would be graphing, obviously. And then, so we only do the student-friendly scales to level 3 because that's where most of that's the goal. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, and for each SEP, and then adding the DCI in. But what do we do when they are consistently getting level 3s and that they're ready for more? So what does a 4.0 look like? Well, that's like I had said earlier, we use the CCCs, and they can choose. We're trying something new at our school where 6th grade is going to focus on systems and system models and patterns. And 7th grade will have 2 other CCCs, and 8th grade is going to have the remaining CCCs. So in the past, we've just sort of let them choose whatever they wanted to do, and we didn't really worry about this too much. But we want to start maybe kind of directly teaching this more so that they understand what these cross-cutting concepts are. So maybe we might even make a scale for the 2 that we're going to do, so that they understand when they get to that point to use it. We obviously are talking about these at all times. We're just not directly assessing them because we're assessing other things. Now, this is an example, and I hope you can understand this, but this is an example of a boy that was like, we were doing some graphs, and he said, and I had a prompt for them, and I can't remember what the prompt was, but he said, can I do my own thing? I have an idea. And I was like, yeah, go for it. And I think this is from, if you've taught MyStar 6.6, like the predator, like resources, limited resources, I think. And so he had this idea, and he was so proud of this. He was like, he didn't finish it in the class, obviously, and he took it home and he brought it back in, and he's beside himself. And, so I made a big deal out of it and showed the class, and it was like, it was really, I think eye-opening for him, because he was a kid that would just do what you said because he was smart enough to just get an A and not have to really, or, get a 3.0 or whatever to not really try. So he was just kind of always just sort of passively going through school, and this really lit a fire under him. So then every time we did an assessment, he was my guy of like thinking outside of the box, trying to come up with ways to like wow everybody, with things that he would do. So, and he's in 8th grade now, and he still comes back to me and talks about this kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool. But this is an example of this, and actually Barb had this idea, which I think is great. And we haven't added this yet, like I said, because we're just starting to narrow down the CCCs more and getting them more directed, possibly, but open-ended questions that they can do. So these are just some examples, patterns and cause and effect with graphing, and just some different ideas of some higher level thinking that the kids can do and try. So then each assessment or assignment would be different.
These prompts you could give a student if they needed them.
Right. Yep. And like Barb just said, these are prompts that you could give a student if they needed an idea, or you could also just let them do their own thing. If they had their own idea. Like I said, I don't want to limit them, especially when we're going to the 4.0 and it's above and beyond, because some of them will come up with ideas that I don't have, which is pretty exciting. And I don't think we're doing that one. So some of the, is that, yeah, 39.
Yeah. So we had an activity that we don't have time for, but yeah, we'll just go back and talk about some of the things that people were wondering about.
Yeah. So just looking at slide 39 here with team one. Yeah, the 4.0 would include the CCC. And then I assume it says, how does this look in your grades? So I assume you're talking about like A, B, C, D, E grades. And if stop me if that's not what your question was about, but it is.
Sorry, I was thinking a little bit more like standards-based grading. Do you do standards-based grading with this approach to like tag it to the SEP and tag it to the CCC? Are you putting it in twice?
You can if you want to, but the way that you could, I mean, there's many things you could do. You could even have 3 separate grades if you wanted to, or scores. We've just decided that once they have the SEP down and that they're able to do it, then we can move the DCIs in. If you wanted to, you could create separate scales for DCIs if you wanted to do it that way, and separate scales for CCCs if you're really motivated to do that. We just felt like if we layered it, we wouldn't have to do that. And each assessment, because the problem, this might be getting in a little bit deeper. Okay, so if you do unit based, it's very challenging to come back and to let them continuously try doing things, because you have to move on. You're done with the rock cycle, you're moving on to the water cycle or whatever. So to do that is very difficult to do it, and to have and to do it with what's the word I'm looking for? To really have the spirit of standards-based grading, I guess, because we want to give them as many chances as they can. I've lost my train of thought, by the way. But it's like with the DCIs, you're not expecting them to have a 3 like when you first start this, because it's practice. So if you're in the middle of a unit or the beginning of a unit, you can't really give a 3.0 assessment on something that they need to learn by the beginning of the unit. But you can give a 3.0 assessment based on something that you are scaffolding up to that point. So like, I would never expect them to have the final, so if I made a DCI standard, like a scale, and said, this is what you need to know for a 3, it'd be very hard for me there would be no 3s at the beginning. And we want them to be successful. So it's like the assignment that we give is based on where we're at in the unit. So we're able to adjust as we go through the unit. I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but it's a way to meet them where they're at in that unit and what you're teaching. And then for the grades, oh, good, thank you. And then for the grades, I see the thumb. And then for the grades, it's not like a judgment thing in that, you're comparing them to the class. It's like, do you feel confident that they're on the path to get to a 3.0 in May? That's an A. Okay. So because we're at a school where we have to communicate with parents, we have set like like levels where they need to be at each point. But it's really about, are you confident they're going to get to a 3.0 in May? If you're not confident, that's an A, would be considered an A, because we have to put scores on our report card, which is very unfortunate, and it creates a bunch of problems. But anyway, if they're on track, they get an A. If they're maybe a little bit, they're not on track, but with a little extra help or a little revision and a little like going back and working on some things, they're on their way. That would be a B. And then if they're just a C or lower, we've already contacted the parents. We're already in the process of working with them. So that would be the grading system.
Averaging, it's where they are
No,
at the point.
thank you. Yeah. And if you go back to this, there's no averaging. It's not, where did it go? We don't take these, what the heck? Is it down here? Oh, it's down here. Sorry about this, you guys. We don't take all these scores and average them together. It's where they're at that moment. And so and we really give them some leeway. Like if they get 3 threes in a row, then we're pretty confident. Okay, they understand. They understand how to do this. They're understanding this, this SEP very well, and they're able to use it with content. And then if they get 3 out of 4 at the end, they know that they can level up, that they're ready to go to the next level. So that's been pretty helpful. We're not averaging practice, like there's just no average. It's what do they know at the moment. Does the rubric change? The rubric doesn't change throughout the year. The levels change for them, but then the DCIs that they use will change, and the CCCs will change. Grade level to grade level, like in my mind, in this perfect world that I see, every grade would focus on a different, like 3 different SEPs, and that's how they would focus on it. But it's really hard to, like DCIs are so prevalent. They're like that's like everybody is focused on the DCIs. That's how you were taught. That's how you went to school and were taught. And the SEPs are like something that you just sort of do, and you hope that kids get it. But you figure, oh no, I got to teach these DCIs, and they got to get this to mastery. Whereas, unfortunately, with AI the way it is, the skills that are going to matter are these SEPs. The understanding how to read and how to argue and what this graph means and what this model means are so important. So it's just, and like I said, and that's just my idea, but not everybody has that same idea. So yeah, but the 7th and 8th grade seem to really love it though, the way that we're doing it right now, because they can give assessments, and their assessment can be a CER, their assessment can be a model, their assessment can be a graph, and every 6th grader, for the most part, is coming out with mastery on how to do those things. So it's been working out. Yeah, it works out really well. And then,
They could choose whatever elements they want.
yeah, can you share how to integrate other elements of the SCP? Yeah, they can choose whatever they want to do on that.
Those are the decisions you made for Northeast.
Yeah.
What you wanted.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
What you wanted to be. Mm-hmm. So if there are things that are missing, that an element that a teacher thinks is important that's not on your rubric,
right,
build their own rubric.
Right. We went into these priority standards and we looked at the SEPs, and we decided as a group of like 6 teachers what is important for us, what is important for our kids that we want them leaving 6th grade having mastery with, and that's what we came up with. But I would not recommend just taking my rubrics and using them. I would recommend you getting together with 6 people, or however, if you have a team, and I know unfortunately some of you don't, but if you have a team of teachers and you can talk about things and what you think is important for your school, you might come up with something a little different. You might even come up with, maybe you think other SEPs are more important. But that's what we thought, and that's what we came up with. And it's really been working for us. So that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Barb. I will hang out for a little bit if there's something that you want to chat at me about. I'm sure you all had a long day though. And so we thank you for being here. Lindsay will send out the recording and the slides sometime in the next week or so. I will send you sketch information, and Robin's going to present this at MSTA also. So this was a bit of a trial run, and we're going to get it down to an hour and refine it. And so if you have some more questions, or you want to hear it one more time, or get some actual handouts and that kind of thing, and you're going to be at MSTA, come and look for us there. So thanks so much for your time.
I can stick around too if you have any questions.
Okay. I didn't want to volunteer your time, but if there's something else you want to run by, we'll hang out for a while. Otherwise, log off, enjoy your evening, and thanks for being here.